Welcome all to part 3 of my Hello Neighbor Alphas Retrospective series. Today, it's time to discuss Alpha 1, and I've been anticipating this one as much as you viewers at home. I remember being hells of excited when this build was first announced, as this is the one that motivated me to spend $30 on the Humble Bundle and play it for myself. The consensus is that Alpha 1 is the best build of the game, and I'm here to go in depth and decide if that claim has any worth. Let's waste no time with this one, so buckle up duckies and enjoy the ride. Alpha 2 gave us plenty of pre-release media to discuss, and so Alpha 1, it being as unique as it is, should be similarly fruitful, right? Alas, I hate to be the bringer of bad news, but in terms of videos, my research only yielded me a single fruit of labor. That being this nearly 2-minute trailer that features the intro cutscene, gameplay of the final Alpha 1, and another cutscene. There's also 8 renders I found labeled as early screenshots, but they aren't too terribly interesting besides this one of the neighbor jumping out a window on what looks to be the 3rd story, one of him holding the toy rifle, and this one which shows a generator that can't be seen by normal means in the Alpha 1 we got to play. Here are the rest of them if you are curious. Well, that's about it. But hey, to remedy this absurd lack of pre-release discussion to be had, let's talk about some unused content I learned about with the help of the official Hello Neighbor Wiki. First, we have this extremely intriguing floor plan, which shows us that the 3rd, 4th, 5th, and even 6th floors were planned to be accessible. There are unusual ideas thrown about here, such as a revolving room, fire room, hospital room, combat room, room with conveyor, and even an anti-gravity room. As you'll learn in our upcoming gameplay segment, Alpha 1 indeed features many strange rooms, and so I can only imagine what these would have been like if they made the cut. Pretty damn interesting stuff for sure. There's also this scrapped second stage for the rifle room minigame, an unused player model which actually had a texture made for its arms, and a few unused objects such as a garage remote, fire extinguisher, and an umbrella. That aforementioned generator is also hidden under the neighbor's house for whatever reason. And even more damning, the mythical golden apple is hiding in the files as well. We have a few unused animations for the key and lockpick, and hints that the subway train would have been operable should the other floors have made it into the final build. There's also this extremely buggy car that is conspicuously named car_drive, as if we were meant to drive cars in Hello Neighbor at one point. That's a really funny idea to me. Also, here's the game's idea of a fork. Alright, I'm done breaking from convention now. So let's continue and discuss Alpha 1's gameplay. Booting up the game, we are presented with a primitive loading screen that makes you forget if you downloaded this from the deep web or not. Funny I say that, as when I first opened it up to get some footage, my PC froze and restarted, and even had to check the D drive for repairs. After that, it restarted again and scared me into believing the game had bricked my computer. Okay, well, not that funny, but what the hell, Alpha 1? Anyways, pressing new game causes the short intro cutscene to play out. And yes, I'm not having the intro and tutorial be its own act as it is too short to warrant one. It is a pleasant evening as that same yellow car is driving down the road, although this time, it appears as if some paranormal activity is going on. The shot switches to the neighbor picking up a pair of binoculars as that familiar piano note sets in, and he spies on us out the window. We see him going up the stairs where he continues his voyeurisms. But can you blame the man? There is clearly an anomaly here. On arrival, our modelless protagonist nails his to-do list to the lamppost, and we are then taught the basic controls by turning on the power to our home, unlocking the front door, throwing our stuff inside, or conversely making some nice decorations, and then having a rest. After which, the game begins, simple as that. Though it's really short, that still doesn't make me appreciate having to sit through this little intro sequence about 50 times, considering I restart the game a lot to get my clips. But after that, all the boards on the windows and locks on the doors to our dear old neighbor's house magically disappear overnight, allowing us to begin exploring, and oh my god, why does he have a train? Entering through the front door, this eerie ambiance sets in alongside the ubiquitous sound of the train moving along the tracks. Unfortunately, this was the last time we got to hear this ambiance in its full glory. In Alpha 2, it was present, but the trigger box for it was so poorly designed that it kept fading in and out as you traversed the house. Here, it is executed almost perfectly, as this mere ambiance tells us just how deep the waters we've gotten ourselves into are. The first floor is a remix of that of the pre-alpha houses, with the garage to our left, the living room and basement door to our right, and the kitchen in front of us. There are doors dotted along the hallway to our left, and the one on the opposite end can be opened, allowing us entry into a room with a grave? Yeah, this is the point where Hello Neighbor got strange, but not in a bad way at this stage necessarily. Pressing forward, we can make accessing this room slightly easier by removing these chairs which block the doors. Rather annoyingly, chairs tend to get stuck on your head if you throw them. Chair shenanigans notwithstanding, this room will be important to us momentarily, and while perusing the house, you will find an elevator to the second floor that the neighbor can terrifyingly use, a boiler room, and a hammer in this drawer in the bedroom and a crowbar under the bed. There is yet another hammer in the garage, where you can also open the garage door with this switch. Using either or, you can pry off the boards on the door, that rhymes, already getting you a step closer to the basement, but getting the key won't be so easy this time around. Before we get to that though, let's address the game's main selling point, the neighbor's AI. This build features the best AI of any Hello Neighbor version period, and that's a sad truth considering this is the third build to ever be created, and it deteriorated with each version following this. The neighbor can legitimately startle you at moments, as he is fine-tuned to the house's layout and can corner you with ease. Take this clip from the aforementioned trailer, for instance. Alpha 1 also lacks the problem with later houses in that he can navigate more than just the first floor. He is a genuine threat to consider at all times here, even if your character runs about 3 times as fast as him or he can be cheesed in a rather simple way. Sometimes the neighbor will follow you all the way to your home and jump through the window, where he'll promptly glitch out and be stuck there until you go to sleep or run into him. Even if you can't replicate this glitch, it's easy to have him follow you to the furthest point his AI will normally allow, which is in the middle of the street, and run back into his home as he slowly follows suit. It's a shame you can eliminate a threat as large as him in such a ridiculous way, but hey, what can you do? Besides not cheating, that is. I also want to dedicate this time to discuss how the neighbor functions. Originally, I was going to save this for the pre-alpha retrospective, which is up next, but in that build, all he does is one of 3 things. Watch TV, and you guessed it, watch TV. Juxtaposing that against his behavior here, he actually performs many household routines, such as watering the plants, sweeping the floors, and watching that damn TV. He just can't get enough of it, can he? He does these chores when he is in his idle mode, but if he feels someone has been running amok in his home, he'll enter the hunt mode and become more proactive. Also, if he begins his chase, there's little you can do to make him stop. Sometimes even going into the safety of your own home doesn't make him any less adamant on catching you, as we've seen before. This all goes without saying that he can be buggy at times, however, as he often enters his vegetized state and stands menacingly until he spots you. He also has multiple spawn points, I believe, and I've observed him doing just this when he spawns on the second floor in particular, which essentially gives you free reign on the first floor. Despite all that, this build still proves mighty challenging, as each time you get caught, the game refreshes and Mr. Neighbor will do his usual, placing bear traps and cameras about, boarding up windows, and blocking doors with chairs in efforts to hinder you. He does this relentlessly so, and thus the best strategy is to keep getting caught to a minimum. And that's not even mentioning the fact that you lose all your items if you're caught with them in hand, so make sure to secure your spoils in the player house, or else all ill-fated games return to their original locations. Speaking of, getting caught for your second time treats you to a cutscene. The neighbor enters the basement when a car crashes and a tire rolls out of the crack of the door, with the neighbor emerging shortly thereafter and continuing his day like business as usual. Additionally, there's a chance you'll get a tutorial and minigame of sorts, where you appear to be in a circus with a Ferris wheel in the distance. A cupboard is on the right while a bed on the left, and you can hide under either or as the neighbor counts in a macabre game of hide and seek. With that out of the way, we can move on up to the second floor and oh my god, why is there a shark? While you can easily jump across this pool of water and bypass this shark, recall the boiler room on the first floor. Turning the valve will cause that water to freeze, or you'll no longer need to perform some parkour to get across here. There's also a bell on this counter, which can be used in the room with the grave on the first floor, giving you access to a shovel and allowing you to dig up a teacher mannequin, which will be of use in this classroom and oh my god, why is there a classroom? Okay, that one I can answer. There are some magnet numbers that you can place on the chalkboard, but if you haven't placed the teacher mannequin down, more paranormal phenomena ensues as ghost children assault you with spitballs and paper airplanes, knocking the magnets off the board. Placing the mannequin down causes them to cease their tomfoolery, where you're then able to complete the math problems listed and obtain the toy rifle. Basic maths, very easy. Unfortunately, this rifle has no effect on the neighbor in this build, but is integral to completing the game regardless. With the gun in your possession, you can activate this very well made if not brief shooting range minigame. A silver key to unlock the counter will drop in this box behind you, granting you access to this disorderly room. Without the jackhammer, this is a roadblock, as these loose bricks cannot be torn down. Moving this chair off the door once more, make your way to the neighbor's second living room and into this hallway. To the left is the security room, where you can deactivate all the neighbor's cameras with the press of the button and get the lockpick. With it, you can unlock the basement early, but if we push forward just a bit more, we proceed to this bathroom and get our hands on the jackhammer. There is also a second bell in the toilet. Proceeding back to that room, you can now tear down the bricks and make your way into this creepy child's room with a mother mannequin holding a toy bear. Next to the bear in the crib is the key to the basement, and there is also a drawing instructing you to put the toy bear into the furnace on the first floor. Doing this does nothing, and my only explanation is that they planned to have this implemented as an extra step to obtaining the key, but ended up putting it in the crib as they ran short on time. Now, why they left in this meaningless clue is beyond me, as it only deceived people. Made for some interesting clickbait videos back in the day though, but enough of that. Let's wrap this up and open the basement. And there's another Hello Neighbor Alpha Retrospective under my belt. A lot of people disliked the ending to this one, as it was a cliffhanger after all. I, however, really love this ending, as I believe it's executed phenomenally. The macabre scene of being literally buried alive accompanied with that unfitting melody is very charming in my eyes, as I always have a knack for dark themes being made light of like that. Also, it's a clear callback to the announcement trailer. As for my thoughts on this build in particular, I think it's the most fun you can have with Hello Neighbor these days. It proves challenging as I found myself needing to quickly craft genuine strategies to evade the neighbor on multiple occasions. And while there is a clear emphasis on puzzles in this one, it isn't to such an absurd extent. Unlike those in later builds, the puzzles in Alpha 1 can be found out without the aid of a walkthrough, even if they tend to be outlandish. Also, there's no platforming required, which is an immediate plus. As this serves as the point in Hello Neighbor's history where absurdity took the center stage, theories and other content of that nature here on YouTube proliferated, such as methods to obtaining the golden apple, which was a craze in the community of the likes of unlocking Luigi in Mario 64. This was so due to us getting a glimpse of the mysteries hidden within the basement, and as it appears that the developers hadn't decided what they wanted to hide in it yet, there was much speculation to be had. Was the neighbor a mad scientist creating portals? Did he create a pocket dimension of sorts in his basement? An entire civilization, maybe? You also had the trash can glitch, a glitch so famous that it got referenced in later versions. If you sat inside a trash can and spammed control, you'd reach heights so far up that you could escape the boundaries of the map. Speaking of, there were cloned versions of the player and neighbor's house off in the distance, which are used in that cutscene with the tire. Amusingly, there were a lot of videos of people placing a trash can on this model of the neighbor's head. But enough about trash cans. I feel as if the internet outdid themselves when dissecting this build of the game. Everything was busted open. You can also imagine my surprise when I read up on the Hello Neighbor wiki a bit and discovered that not only was the third floor planned to be accessible, but so was the fourth, fifth, and even sixth floors, and all the fantastical things that were planned to be on them. Just imagine all the YouTube media concerning this game multiplied by 3 times, because even without all this extra content, this build was huge for the community. But, yet again, this all goes without saying that as Alpha 1 brought many interesting elements to the table, it did so by compromising the feelings that the pre-alpha gave us. By this, I mean Alpha 1 is completely and absurdly unrealistic, and so after you finish your business on the somewhat ordinary first floor, which doesn't take very long, mind you, the game becomes considerably less scary, as your fears are replaced by amazement while you explore Pee Wee Herman's Funhouse of Horrors. Despite that, Alpha 1 still felt like a stealthy horror game to a degree, even if the puzzles began to encroach and indulge in the spotlight way too much by this point. I say this as someone who enjoys puzzle games, and so I'd be lying if I said this build isn't fun as hell even after all these years. But I believe puzzles can be done correctly in games like Hello Neighbor, Alpha 2 being my case in point. Whereas the Alpha 1 house's interior and exterior are over the top zany, Alpha 2 managed to hide some interesting goings-ons, such as a sliding door within the house. Whenever I enter Alpha 1's house, it doesn't feel like the breaking and entering experience I crave so dearly. Rather, it feels like I am exploring the type of house I built in Animal Crossing when I was 7 years old. Another problem is the design of the house. It suffers from the same problem the cartoon art style does, in that it is too colorful to come off as threatening. When the house lacks all these insane add-ons and appears ordinary, it's inherently more threatening, as you feel like you're invading a stranger's home, not one owned by a cartoon character. Yes, the neighbor was always unhinged, but when his house's appearance spoils that fact, it ruins it for me. I just appreciate if the house looked as if it has actually been lived in is all, as it adds to the horror in my eyes. Nevertheless, I'm one who enjoys both the old and cartoon art style, as the former manages to feel like a playable Pixar short at times, almost indescribably so, and the latter doesn't require an explanation if you've been following the series thus far. To validate my point, I'm seldom scared whenever playing Alpha 1 outside of the incidental cases where the neighbor startles me by coming around the corner.
That's exactly what I'm gonna do. Oh fuck! Holy shit!
Whether that's because of what I've listed above, how I've grown to find the chase music obnoxious rather than intense, or simply because I've played this game for nearly 6 years now, it's an issue that takes away from the experience. Alpha 1 is still a fantastic build of the game though, and I wholeheartedly believe it deserves its label as the best one out there. It's clear why people like it so, and this build also holds the title of having the most remakes in the form of mods. In retrospect, I realize that the pre-alpha and alpha 2 are the only two pre-release versions that managed to capture the feeling I desired from this game. Especially so since every build after alpha 2 featured the Act 3 one, which we learned to dread. Speaking of, the pre-alpha is next on my list, and boy is that one going to be interesting. I'll see you all when that time comes.
I'm in! I'm finally in! What the? Is this Andy's room from Toy Story?